Hello and welcome to part 8 of starting a fountain pen collection. In this episode, I now will focus on finding a red ink that I'm after. So after reading some of the forums, getting some of their advice, found will be fairly impossible to test all the inks available, and also there's a lot of factors that will be involved in the test. So, the pen types that you'll be using with the different nibs, the paper, and also the different types of ink will vary a great deal. What I try to do, what you see in front of you here, is is basically what I'm trying to do is trying to get a short list ready to test. So I don't want to be testing 100 different red inks on 100 different nibs on 100 different papers. So what I'm trying to do now is looking at some shades of colors that I like and kind of narrow down already, and then the list will kind of narrow down further when I start to pick out the characteristics of the ink. So whether it be a wet ink or dry ink. By wet ink, meaning the drying time takes longer, easy flowing of the ink, and also looking at the saturation, the shading, the sheen of the ink. So these are the characteristics that you can already cut down already when you look at some of the reviews that have been done. For example, on Goulet pens, you already see most of the big brand ink names already reviewed, so you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel to find the perfect ink that you're after. The only thing I have with concerns with some of the reviews is that a lot of the inks are looking different depending on who you read and who you kind of lift the examples from. So here we have two examples of the cross ink. I don't know if you can see that well. These are supposedly the same ink, but actually if you look at the shading, it looks like two different colors. So, and also this printer may be not the most ideal. So I've tried to extract some of the reviews already and to try and make a short list. So there are some things that I like and some things I don't like, especially if you look at some of this KWZ ink, this Iron Gall, I think Red 3. It's coming out black in this on this paper review. And then if you look at some of this Herben ink, this is from Coeco. I think these are the book binders, and we also have Blackstone. To name a few, I think this lot is Herben. We have a diamine features quite heavily with this. Also, there's a lot of inks in different shades. We have Mont Blanc, Poppy Red. We have the Pilot inks, and there's a few more KWZ inks here. Also have Pelican and the Visconti. So here we have a wide range. I will pick out a few of these and also to narrow down with the characteristics, and then hopefully we can start to test. I mean, I've already made a start with inks I already have. So I don't know if you can see that well. So here I've started to test with the Visconti Bordeaux red, and to make the test kind of fair and even, or as comparable as possible, I decided to use a 5 different pens. So Visconti Rembrandt, Lamy Nex in a medium, Waterman Laureate, the Parker 51, and Kaweco Supra in a broad nib. And what I've done is I use 4 different paper types. So this is a 70 GM paper from Staples. In this one here you'll see the printer paper 75 GM. Then I have Rodier paper 80 GM, and finally the Clairefontaine at 90 GM paper. So I'll apply the ink the same ways each time onto the paper, so you have a like for like on the different paper types. And so far, I mean, this is the first test in its kind for me, so it will be some trial and error in this as I find out how I'm going to test. But certainly this is one way to start to kind of find the perfect match between pen, paper, and the ink. So what I can already start to see is that if I start with this one here, this is the printer paper 75 GM paper. I've given a mark 5 out of 10 on this one, because I think this was the worst performing paper that you could have for a fountain pen ink. I mean, it was kind of blotting away, and it really soaked up the ink on this paper. And if you see the close-ups, I don't know if you can see. I mean, for me, it just didn't feel comfortable. It felt like some tissue paper or something. And here, to quite some surprise, that I put the Clairefontaine 90 GM 6 out of 10. For me, it was paper was too smooth for me. I don't know if it's if they weren't suitable for my range of pens, but I found it hard to write, especially with the Visconti Rembrandt. It kept skipping a stroke, and for me that was kind of frustrating. And it kind of was just too smooth. It was kind of gliding off the paper. In probably second place, this will probably surprise a lot of people as well, I put the Rodier paper 80 GM in second, because again, it's similar to the Clairefontaine paper. It was a little bit smooth, and it did skip a beat on some of the pen strokes. I don't know if you can see that also. It kind of skipped when I was writing Rodier with the Visconti. So, and I was kind of surprised as well, because the paper feels really good, but then maybe it just wasn't suited for my pen, or the nib rather. Here I've put in an 8 out of 10 for this paper. It's a cheap paper from Staples with 70 GM, and actually it came out the best with all the pens. So if you can see, with the Visconti, great colouring, and also with the Lamy, the Waterman, the Parker 51, and the Kaweco, all were writing quite smoothly and nicely. There was no problem with skipping a stroke or anything like that. There was no bleeding, there's no feathering, there's no, it was just quite pleasant to write on. And what I did further was to rate each of the pens. So here I started to rate, in last place probably the Parker 51, because I wanted to see the ink flow, and with the fine nib of the Parker 51, it doesn't really showcase the colour, so I put that in last place. If you disagree, please let me know. Lamy Nex also, again, it didn't really showcase the colour too well. So I put that in 6 out of 10. And then in third place, I put in the Kaweco Supra with a broad nib. It showed good color. I didn't have any problems with it, but I actually found the other two were slightly better. So in second, I put in a Visconti Rembrandt, which is its own pen basically, so its own ink and its own pen. So I decided to put that in second, and it really shows off some of the color. And actually, the one that came up the sharpest of color was the Waterman pen, Waterman Laureate. But I think this was either a fine or medium, so I think it's a close between in between a fine and a medium nib. And so this was the best one of the 5 pens, and also on the best paper. So I give it an 8.5 out of 10. And actually, it's a fairly old pen now, but to quite some surprise, it's held its own with some of the newer pens and newer designs that was on offer. So hopefully in the next few videos I will test a few more of these pen, paper and ink types in this way, and hopefully it will come up with some more surprises like it has done in this video. Hopefully to catch you next time. Cheers.